Evening. This is the Brookline. Start off with announcements and updates. I'd first like to read a proclamation recognizing Ann Thies of Brookline Interactive Group and what she and BIG has done on behalf of or for the town of Brookline and others. And that proclamation reads, whereas the town of Brookline has benefited from the leadership, creativity, and ingenuity of Ann Thies in her role as Deputy Director of the Brookline Interactive Group, and whereas the Brookline Interactive Group has served thousands of Brookline residents by providing comprehensive media coverage of culture, news, government, art, and education, and whereas this service has included the dynamic programming of Brookline's community access and civic television channels over the air and over the internet, the teaching of media production and literacy classes for residents ages 5 to 95. And whereas during the unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic, Ann Thies transformed Brookline's public media capabilities by spearheading the implementation of remote meetings, upgraded camera systems, and more accessible and inclusive tools for government transparency and community information. And Ann Thies has injected an indelible amount of passion, care, kindness, hard work, and humanity in the town of Brookline's community media landscape, whether at a select board meeting on a Tuesday night or streaming election forums and providing hands-on tutorials with select board members, teens, and seniors. And whereas Ann Thies has left behind an infrastructure of resilient media resources, a treasure trove of media production tools available to all Brookline residents, and a legacy of how to capture the spirit and soul of a community in both its toughest and joyous times. And whereas the town of Brookline recognizes Ann Thies for her irreplaceable commitment to pushing the envelope, keeping her ear to the ground, and always making the way we represent ourselves as a town and as a community a model to be copied by towns and cities throughout not just the nation, but the world. Now, therefore, the Select Board of the town of Brookline, Massachusetts, commends Ann Thies for her work and invites all residents, neighbors, and fans to celebrate the public servant, the media maker, the educator, and the person who is Ann Thies. Signed by Brookline Select Board, February 28th, 2023.
Yay.
Thank you, Ann, for all you do and have done.
Thank you so much. That is totally unexpected. I'm like completely flabbergasted right now. I wasn't expecting that. That is amazing. And I'm so appreciative to have worked in this community, especially during the pandemic. It's been really, really great and eye-opening for me to like work so closely with government officials, really trying hard to make their community better. So thank you so much for letting me in the brief window I was there and from 2,000 miles away for the last 3 years, basically. I really appreciate it. And I'm really sad to be moving on, but really will always look back on this time as very pivotal for me.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you. And I understand that Heather Hamilton is stepping into your role today.
Yep, she is. So it'll be a nice transition. And I think things will go very smoothly and very well at BIG with that transition.
Okay. Any other comments from the select board?
In general or?
Updates,
Yes,
comments, announcements? You know the routine.
yes, that part, yes. Well, first, thank you, but yes. So I realized tonight, oh, there's Joe. I was just going to email you. I'm going to email you in a minute. I realized that we have a lot of folks slated tonight for public comment for the ARPA grants. And I wanted to say a few things. First, I want to encourage you all to come to the ARPA committee meeting this Friday at 2:00. It will be hybrid, so there will be an online version. And for those of you who don't have access to good internet, you can come here to Town Hall and keep Tyler company. And from this time forward, they'll be hybrid And starting in April, of course, we'll actually also, you will see Mike, Arthur, and I here physically. But in the interim, just Tyler. So to be really, really clear, we have not reviewed the grants yet. So it's not really the most ideal time for public comment on the grants. We are literally right now in the process of reading them. All of the grants will be graded along the same rubric. So at this point, we really just need to read them and go through the checklist. Do they meet certain criteria and certain hurdles to be advanced? And I just say this because what I would encourage you to do is come on March 31st, which is our public hearing for the ARPA grant process. By then, we'll have an idea of which grants actually have kind of crossed the actual hurdles of being fundable, and we'll be making the list of, you know, what makes the cut and how much. So we're happy to hear you. We're always happy to hear you. But what I would encourage you to do is just wait just a little bit longer so that we have a better idea as a committee what we're looking at and what we have to balance. The other thing I want to say is that we had a very robust public engagement process at the beginning of the ARPA funding process with the Brookline Community Foundation. And they produced a wonderful report that's available. We should probably ask Tyler and Mike, remind me to put it up on the ARPA site, that we used for round one to determine where our emphasis would be for spending. And we had no intention of redoing this engagement process for round two, but rather continue to use what we learned from round one and some. So we're still following what we got from the Brookline Community Foundation in terms of this robust community engagement process. So I want folks to keep that in mind. And then the third thing I really have to say, because frankly, there's been some insinuation that we are misappropriating money. And I'm going to have to say, I really don't appreciate that. Every single person on this committee is a volunteer. And we're not misappropriating money. We don't get any of it. We are doing the best we can with the tools we have at hand. We are trying to meet many needs by many people who are all demanding of us. And we're trying to do it in a fair and transparent way, which is why we created the scoring rubric. So the grant application, the questions literally track to the score on the rubric. So you can see the questions we ask, you get scored exactly on that answer on the scoring sheet. So again, I ask you to be patient. I ask you to understand that there's lots of people asking for money. We're going to do the very best we can to have the biggest impact with these funds. And we are always happy to hear your input, but think about March 31st. And one of the things we did get an ask for was to move that meeting to noon. And it's on our agenda to discuss with the committee on Friday to see if we can do that. That's all. Thank you very much. See you Friday.
Thank you.
That was a lot. I'm sorry.
Any other comments from the select board or updates or announcements? Yes, John.
So Devin's going to help me with a visual here. And it references an historic event for Brookline. And it might come as a little bit of a shock to some people. But it was not until 1960, in March, they held their elections back then, town elections. It was not until 1960 that for the first time a woman was elected to the Brookline Select Board. And the woman was Louise Castle, someone who I would have to say became legendary in Brookline politics. She had as her campaign managers, this part really stuns me, future Governor Michael Dukakis and former U.S. Attorney General Elliot Richardson. He was then, I think, Attorney General to be Elliot Richardson. And they managed her campaign. She was reelected twice. And the headline, to my chagrin, because I later became editor of this newspaper, much later. Don't, don't mistake me for the editor at the time. The headline at the time said, "A lady takes over." I think it's educational every now and then to go back and realize how different things were not so long ago. 1960, what would that be? Someone do the math. 63 years ago. Yeah. But that was the headline when for the first time a woman was elected to the select board, and it was the first time in the 255-year history of the town. So just thought that might be a historical note of interest to a lot of people.
Yeah, that is very interesting. Okay, any other select board announcements, updates, or comments? No. Okay, let's move on to public comment. John, you want to? rules.
Indeed, now that they've moved. Oh, here we are. Once again, thank you for joining us for public comment. It's an opportunity for us to hear your perspective on the issues of Brookline that matter to you. A few rules to share. Each person speaking tonight is limited to 3 minutes. You don't need to use the entire time, but you may if you like. Please refrain from personal attacks, refrain from addressing personnel issues during your comments. Members of the public sometimes raise questions. We may be able to provide a quick answer to a question, but are more likely to work with staff to get a more thorough answer and respond over email. We'll let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining and when your time is up. Please conclude your remarks at that time. And if you have more to say, you are welcome to send an email to board members expressing your thoughts in greater detail. Devin, who is first on our list?
The first person signed up for public comment is Marty Rosenthal. Marty, you've been promoted to a panelist. Your 2 minutes will begin when you're ready.
Okay, I think I finally negotiated everything. Thank you. I'm Marty Rosenthal, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 9, formerly Select Board, Precinct 9 lifer. Now for 3 weeks opposing the Harvard Street project and the contract, calling it a seismic shift and evoking Vietnam's "we had to destroy the town to save it." I'm back for 2 reasons, albeit beating a too alive horse that seemingly left the barn. First, another example of my urgent request, analysis of fatal risks, dozens of Brookline businesses. Last week showing a January 31st memos, 4-story buildings from Alton Place to Vernon Street, but ignoring everything else beyond that. Now for another block and a nationwide treasure. May I have slide 1, please? Monday's Globe about Paperback Booksmith, where you can get fabulous advice on books for a child of any age. I've confirmed that it's rented. So slide 2, please. Voila, it and maybe all, even CVS, may be here today, gone soon. But for what? Many luxury and very few affordable units? I again evoke the last 2 words of Bridge on River Kwai, madness, madness. And secondly, I last night to Advisory's Town Council budget hearing gave 4 examples, including this project, where municipal lawyers often tell the executive branch only what it wants to hear. Joe Callahan, a very smart lawyer, kindly replied, and then later, supporting what I would call preemptive supineness, circulated a recent letter to other towns from lawyers for civil rights. By the way, friends of mine. This 5-decade lawyer myself.
You have
very
30 seconds.
respectfully- did I hear something? 30 seconds?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thinks he's flat out wrong. Like the act itself doesn't even use the guidelines most harmful Brookline criterion, contiguous lots. And the act to affordability is analogous to Minneapolis's police or to Brookline's police. The contract is a waste of time and money, and it should go instead the money to the BHA if the state has the gall to try punishing poor tenants to spite our hard-trying town. Thanks.
You've exceeded 2 minutes. The next person signed up for public comment is Sana Hafsiz. You've been promoted to a panelist. You can unmute and share your video, and your 2 minutes will begin.
Hello, my name is Sana Hafiz. I'm a part-time Brookline resident, soon to be full-time resident. I am the National Program Director for BNBC. BNBC went door to door in low-income Black and Brown communities in Brookline under BHA as well as Section 8 as a part of our CAP program. We used it as an opportunity to do community feedback. The CAP program was massively successful. $500 to 100 families aided them with rising inflation. BNBC has plans to expand this program. Through this outreach of speaking to more than 100 families, job skills programs, affordable housing, and affordable childcare were the largest concerns. This aligns with the findings of the BCF Disparity Report as well as national findings. This is why we created several proposals to address these barriers. These proposals address economic inequality as well as mental health and wellness for our low-income Black and Brown families. I mention families because we exist in families, neighborhoods, and communities. To help a child that is depressed due to socioeconomic stressors, we must ensure that they have stable housing, food, and their parents have stable incomes. Our proposals are designed to address multiple angles of these connected issues. That being said, I'm appalled that $22 million was awarded in round one with no impact being felt in low-income Black and Brown communities. There is still no childcare facility in Brookline that accepts state vouchers, essentially no pathway to affordable housing, and no accessible job skills programs. Instead, we have mothers struggling with 3-hour daily commutes to find childcare and get to work, increasing rent and evictions, and more job loss. This is unacceptable. Per the last select board meeting, it was made clear that 11 million from round two was designated to town entities and that 9.1 remained for non-town entities to apply for. Yet of the 65 proposals, more than 68% are from town entities alone. Town entities that were designated 11 million already in round two have applied for another 21.3 million proposals. Many proposals are for issues that have existed long before COVID, such as bandwidth issues, and some are for completely inappropriate uses, such as the purchase of electric vehicles.
You have 30 seconds.
These proposals aren't going to help low-income, vulnerable Black and Brown communities. Instead, I urge the select board to support BNBC proposals. We are the community, we represent the community. Let us not miss the mark again, especially when the data clearly shows what has and has not worked. As a last note, Chaz, we would like to meet with you on behalf of the largest low-income Black and Brown organization in Brookline, the only one that has gone door to door to create community with leaders of tomorrow. We've already met with Ade, we'd like to meet with you ASAP. I yield any remaining time to the next BNBC speaker.
The next person signed up for public comment is Shatasia. You can come right up to the podium.
Hi, my name is Shatasia Barnes. I'm a single mother to a 2-year-old boy who's out there in the hallway, as you guys all seen. I'm a resident at Veterans Brookline and Veterans Housing in Brookline. I wanted to speak today to show my support for Black and Brown initiatives such as the Affordable Child Care Committee, because there is no solid or consistent option for affordable childcare in Brookline. The Affordable Child Care Committee has designed a plan that will create infrastructure, which is basic facilities and systems to their to create basic facilities and systems to better serve my community for years to come, not just a handful of scholarships handed out via lottery. To just shut us up for a second. Black and Brown has supported me in numerous ways, including paying for my transportation costs to get me and my son to work and him to daycare. This has saved me so much time because without it, I'd be losing at least 3 hours in a day commuting on the bus or walking, which is absolutely unacceptable. That's because there are 0 local childcare facilities in Brookline that accept state vouchers. In addition, I also wanted to speak on the horrible living conditions in BHA housing. I'm talking about Brookline. If anyone wants to know what these horrible conditions are like, please reach out to BNBC director and they will gladly arrange a time for a tour to be given at Veterans. Or you can come home with me and I can show you myself. Finally, I wanted to voice that I was shocked and extremely disappointed to see that there was 22 million spent in round one. I have felt no effect and neither has my peers. The only organization or program that has made a difference in my life is BNBC. I'm proud to be part of BNC's Affordable Child Care Committee. I'm also proud to be a part of the solution that was made by the committee for the committee.
You have 30 seconds.
I ask that the select board support BNBC initiative as they are only ones we, the low income Black and Brown community, feel are addressing our main concerns. We are affordable housing, affordable childcare, and we need jobs. Thank you.
The next person signed up for public comment is Natasha Ate. You've been promoted to a panelist. You can unmute and share your video if you're comfortable. Your 2 minutes will begin.
Hello, my name is Natasha and I'm a Black resident of Brookline and I'm a mother of 2. And I wanted to speak today to highlight my support for Black and Brown Club ARPA proposals. I'm not aware of any other proposals submitted because no other organization other than BNBC was reached out to me or my peers. I joined the BNBC Affordable Child Care Committee to be a part of the solution for a problem every low-income mother in Brookline has to face. Another BNBC program that I support is the Aviation Job Skills Program. My daughter participated in the drone STEM course late last year. One proud moment was me sitting in the back of the airplane, watching my daughter take her first flight as the pilot in control. It is exciting to see her aspirations and determination to become a pilot. I'm looking forward to the aviation program, and I hope that the Select Board supports this initiative. BNBC has done community outreach and has created proposals to address equity with their job skills, affordable housing, and affordable childcare programs. Having a stable living income, affordable housing, and affordable childcare would also greatly improve the equity of life for low-income residents. I believe BNBC represents my voice and the voice of the vast majority of low-income Black and Brown Brookline residents. I ask that the Select Board prioritize and support their proposals. Thank you, and I yield my time for the next BNBC speaker.
The next person signed up for public comment is Rebecca. I don't see a Rebecca in the attendee list. If you are here and want to raise your hand, we'll get back to you. The next person after that is Audra. You've been promoted to a panelist. You can unmute and share your video if you're comfortable, and your 2 minutes will begin.
Hello, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay?
We can.
Perfect. My name is Audra. I am a member of Black and Brown Club, and I'm also an Affordable Childcare Committee. I'm also a certified credible messenger mentor. I'd like to speak in support of the Black and Brown Club initiatives. As a low-income mother that raised 4 children, I know the importance of affordable childcare and fully support the Affordable Childcare Committee plans. Black and Brown Club also offers extremely useful initiatives to our community, such as the Job Skills Program and the Affordable Housing Program. As a youth mentor, I have found that it's very hard to help people's overall conditions when they're homeless, struggling, and don't have their basic needs met. I fully support Black and Brown Club for our simple goal of advancing economic equity for low-income Black and Brown people in Brookline. They have already delivered with their CAP program. Thank you. I yield any remaining time to the next Black and Brown speaker.
I think we're going to circle back to Rebecca.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
We can.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Pardon my tardiness. I wasn't able to join the first time. My name is Rebecca Obuku, or everyone calls me Becky. I'm a lifelong resident of Brookline, mother of 2, and I am also one of the committee members for BNBC. I'm just here to also put in my support for what all my committee members have actually spoken about. Talking about childcare, like Shartasia said, how BNBC has really supported her as well. I live here and haven't gotten no support whatsoever until we created this committee to help low-income families, to help Black families as well, to help everyone who is in Black and Brown in Brookline. We want the best for us. We here talking to you guys for you guys to support us, for us to get the fundings we need, and for everything we need to be approved. I'm sorry about that, guys. So I'm just gonna piggyback on everything they said. I support it. Please, we need you guys' support. And that's all I can say for now. Thank you.
The next person signed up for public comment is Tamu.
Hello, my name is Tamu Jackson, and I am a Black and Brown member, and I am the founder of Her Wings First. And I'm just going to talk about a couple of things. One, I wanted to talk about affordable housing and affordable first-time home ownership in Brookline. Being someone who is trying to build myself up to be able to own a home, it is saddening to realize that I most likely will not be able to own that home in Brookline, which is the place I've called home for 13 years and that my son has called home all his life. I also wanted to mention that after COVID, people have been struggling, facing eviction and hardships. And with the funds that are coming in from Opera, I do not believe that there's any reason that anyone should be in any of the affected communities should be struggling with being able to pay their rent and should be facing losing their homes or their where they live. Affordable childcare. I was a foster mom for 16 years, therapeutic foster mom for teenage boys. And the children that came in my house did not have any place to go unless it was the teen center once that opened and if they were old enough. But if they were younger, there was no place for them to go. Right now, I have guardianship of my first foster son's nephew, and he had to get on the MECO bus to go to Roxbury to go use his voucher for after school in order, and that's just something that they were able to help with. So it's a really big concern for our children to be able to go to after school programs here in their community and feel a part of their community and not have to go somewhere else. And last, Her Wings First is my nonprofit. And one of the things that I struggled with during COVID was being secluded. I like to garden. I've been gardening for years, and that was my therapy.
You have 30 seconds.
And right now, with food security that we're dealing with from inflation and food security we were dealing with during COVID, not being able to get to stores, I was able to grow a lot of my fruits, vegetables, herbs. And for families to be able to do that together, to have a small space where they can produce their own food, and it's just important. So I just wanted to say it's family connection, it's food security. And to be able to work with each other, moving our bodies, prioritizing self-care and rest. All of these things provide relief from stress and anxiety, and
You've
it's
exceeded 2
important to
minutes.
prioritize. Thank you.
The next person signed up for public comment is Yolandi, who I don't see in the attendee list. If you are here and you want to raise your hand, we'll circle back. The next person in the attendee list is signed up for public comment, Nicole, who I don't see in the attendee list. But if you want to raise your hand and you're here, we'll circle back to you. The next person signed up for public comment is Amanyona. Who I don't see in the attendee list, but if you do join us and want to raise your hand, we will circle back to you. The next person signed up for public comment is Barry. Who I don't see in the attendee list, but if you want to raise your hand, if you join us, we will circle back to you. The next person signed up for public comment is Willie. You can come right up to the podium.
Good evening. Hello, my name is Willie Johnson. I'm a supporter of BNBC. Also, I'm the owner of Midas Touch Painting Co. We're painting contractors. I want to speak on the affordable housing and the proposals that are written. I would like to say I believe that is highly important that we look to that. Not only the reason you see it going around throughout cities of Medford, cities of Rosendale, the new breakage on different affordable housing acts. Why? Because it's highly needed. We need to look at the different proposals of child care. You listen to the mothers and the struggle that they have. We all had our fair due share of struggles. I'm pretty sure of that. We never all was successful. As coming up and growing, as time went along, we may be successful now, but it's important for us to look back and understand our communities and how they are to grow successful as well. I believe that is highly important. that we should look at that and to have a pure understanding of everything. As far as contractors go and the work being done inside of Brookline, I had a question regarding what was the percentage rate in the last 5 years of contractors out here?
Percentage rate of what?
Of minority contractors or contractors.
I don't have that off the top of my head, but I can get that to you. If you leave me your email, I'll make sure to follow up with you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Other than that, I highly recommend that y'all support the proposals presented by BNBC and even looking over them to understand them and to say to yourself correctly,
You have 30 seconds.
this is very important and nice what these guys are doing, and I believe they are a great fit for it. You know, but thank you for your time, and thank you for having me.
The next person signed up for public comment is Danelle O'Neill.
Sorry, 1 second. Sir,
Don't leave without giving your
I
contact.
was gonna say, if you need to head out earlier, you can leave your email with Devin here. I just write it down and I'll get back to you. So if this could go on a while, I don't want you to feel like you gotta stay till the end.
Hey, Danelle.
Hey, guys. Good evening. So, my name is Donald O'Neill, senior town meeting member from Precinct 4, my 4th term. I'm also on the advisory committee. I serve on the Public Safety and Human Service subcommittees on the advisory committee. I am not a member because of the advisory committee of the Black and Brown Club, but I'm definitely 100% behind the Black and 100% support the Black and Brown initiatives and everything that has to go with the Black and Brown. You heard a lot of people speak today. I remember the last time I was here was the first day of Black History Month, and it's fitting that the last day of Black History Month, you have a hybrid of BIPOC residents here, people speaking up on behalf of home and what has been going on for way past 63 years ago. That's continuing to happen with lost opportunities and frankly disrespect. So I guess we're here to tell you we're tired of singing "We Shall Overcome." And when you do look at these proposals and see other opportunities like small businesses and things coming down the road in regards to childcare and just really supporting the vulnerable.
You have
in
30
this town.
seconds.
Thank you, Devin. It's time to do better because we're tired of singing "We Shall Overcome." I'm holding my son's book right here. It says chapters. He writes characters and everything, like, you know, this is what he does. Autistic is in the RISE program at Heath School. And we don't, you know, we're changing it, we're turning the chapter. Let's do the right thing. Okay, you guys. Thank you for your time.
The next person signed up for public comment is Samuel.
Good evening, everyone. I actually rise today as someone who grew up in Brookline, understand the importance of education, and really believe that this is our moonshot moment. For those who remember, President Kennedy had a vision that we were going to go to the moon, and not everyone believed him at the time. But now we have a U.S. Space Force. Now we have an opportunity to teach Brookline residents how to fly airplanes, something that President Biden came to Massachusetts saying he wants municipalities to do. He already has given Logan Airport $63 million, given Massachusetts $100 billion to provide these vocational programs that we now see. We have our former Secretary of Labor who has decided to leave really dealing with red tape and bureaucracy to just go have fun and be the president of the NHL. And you have our former governor who, instead of dealing with bureaucracy, just wants to go have fun and manage the NCAA. But as someone who grew up and understands the nuances of Brookline, I see that there being a partnership between government, education, and community through vocational education, understanding how to fly airplanes, teaching people how to fly drones.
You have 30 seconds.
Delivery service with Amazon, as well as do childcare. And so I just implore you all to really think about the future after we all are gone. Hopefully this will be our legacy moment. Thank you very much.
The next person signed up for public comment is Jamar.
Yeah, my name is Jamal Payne. I'm a member of the Black and Brown Club, one of the directors, and I'm here to support the all the initiatives, affordable housing, childcare, and in particular the aviation job skill program. Before I got in the wheelchair, I used to do taekwondo, I used to lifeguard, I used to work with the youth, and I know at a certain age, a lot of programs out there could help them, but this job skill program would actually save a lot of youth from going down the wrong path. So just support that. It would be the first in the country as far as that. And it would be like a real good model for other cities that have problems with the youth and things. And yeah, I just hope that Brookline supports some initiatives, especially with the money that was given out. I don't feel like it did a lot to affect the marginalized kids. So, you know, hopefully this time around, y'all could give the money out to the programs that would help tangibly and directly affect these kids' futures before some of them make the wrong path and are rolling in here 20 years later like me. You know what I mean? So I focus on the youth particularly because that's all I really did before I got injured. And yeah, I just feel like that would help them a lot. And hopefully y'all support that. So that's all I really got to say. Thank you.
Do you have that sweet pity that I met outside of town hall that one day?
Yeah, I was gonna bring him, but it was ugly with the weather. I didn't want
Oh yeah, but your dog is yeah, I remember. That's why I was like, wait a minute, that's
Yep,
the guy with
Tiger
the
with
lovely
his snake
dog.
tips.
Yeah,
So what's up? Thank you.
dog people.
The next person signed up for public comment is Ade.
He gets 3.
No, we've
No,
been
no.
we've been doing
We've been doing
two.
Oh, we've been doing 2. Oh, I'm so sorry.
He's last on the list.
Last on the list, okay. We'll give him 3 minutes.
I didn't realize that. Sorry.
Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Ade Janosi.
Ade, do you mind just taking your hat off because I lip read or at least lifting it up? Perfect.
Oh,
So I can
Yeah,
see
yeah,
it really without a
I
shadow.
got nice brown eyes.
And I just need to see your lips without a shadow. Thanks.
Ade Janosi. I'm a father of 2, married, Precinct 4 resident, Brookline resident. And originally from Nigeria. When I moved to Brookline, I was under the impression Brookline is inclusive. And thanks to the community, the brothers and sisters that when I got here coming from a foreign country, welcomed me. But what we've seen over time, and I appreciate you, Miriam, for your comment, I do, we very well value those that volunteer to do the work. But doing the work is all about achieving the objectives. And you've heard from some of the leaders in our communities today. We are the low income. So the history in Brookline has always been other organizations, predominantly white, come up with plans about vulnerable and low income communities. That happened to be my door. my neighbors does, my brothers does, my sister friends. So there's a list of over 50 names that I personally spoke to, your signatures. These are low income from Egmont, 22, High Street veteran, and beyond. Those days, I would say, are over because we like to speak for ourselves. I believe in the leaders, the brothers and sisters that I've met over the last few months about solution. Henceforth, we were able to still, as the only vulnerable organization from round one, still haven't received our funds yet, which happen to be the smallest funds, 50,000 from round one. We haven't gotten a penny. But yet somehow, with the help of the community, we've been able to move over 50,000 to our doors, our neighbors, our people, to help them out. When 22 million was spent, we didn't even feel like we felt a raindrop. So let's put that for the record. Low-income community have not felt nothing from APA. And if anybody can show me the proof, data, I would love to see that. So going forward, we're here to speak for ourselves. I believe in the leaders, the brothers and sisters that I've met, and we want to be at the table. The solution concerning us is our homes, because our wives, our kids, our brothers and sisters.
You have 30 seconds.
We have the right to decide when something or a decision is made on us. So as we go further, I hope for the sake of equality and being fair and truthful to ourselves, that we do the right thing. Look at the data from round one. It speaks for itself. Thank you.
At this time, there are 27 virtual.
Okay. So, Mike.
So,
you want to,
Ida, you left me with the perfect lead-in. Looking at the data from round one, we allocated, and I appreciate allocating money is not the same thing as getting it spent, used the way it needs to be used. But we allocated $12 million to various organizations that made proposals to support vulnerable populations. And just as a couple of examples, $500,000 to the Teen Center, which was mentioned earlier, several $100,000 to food pantries, Steps to Success, very important organization that helps kids stay on the right track. $1.25 million between two programs, $5 million to the Brookline Housing Authority. I appreciate that the money hasn't had its effect yet. A lot of it hasn't been dispersed yet. And it does take time for the organizations to get that money, to spend it, to use it effectively. You know that yourselves, I think. But I don't want to leave anybody with the impression that we weren't thinking about that in the first round and that we're not thinking about it in the second round.
Thank you, Miriam.
I just want to make a quick correction too. Of the 22 million, 12 was spent on vulnerable populations. So that's been misquoted. We spent 22 million total, of which more than 50% was spent on vulnerable populations. And just for background, the reason you haven't gotten the money is, first of all, you're not alone. And I will say it's because, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, the federal government had no actual intent for us to spend the money on community organizations. And so most towns and cities, I can say this very comfortably, they just took that money and put it in their municipal coffers, and they spent it on town needs. By far, 90+% of ARPA funds were spent that way across the United States. Okay. What we did was decide we're going to give it to community organizations and foundations, and the federal government actually had no pathway for us to do that. So Tyler had to essentially create one, which has caused a huge delay in us getting the money into the hands of people. 100%. It has been a long time for us to make that happen, but that's why. So I just think that's an important piece of background that most folks don't know what's been going on in the background. You're not alone. in not getting the money because we really had to literally craft MOUs. We had to work around federal roadblocks. And so we're finally getting out MOUs to organizations.
No, let's move on. Okay, let's go on to the next item. Any other comments from the select board? Okay. Okay. Okay, miscellaneous items. Question of approving the meeting minutes of February 14 and February 21st, 2023. Any questions or edits? No? I move approval of the two set of minutes on favor. Let's see, Miriam? No, wait,
Nope,
John.
Aye.
Miriam,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Okay, I did that last time.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I mean, I don't
Okay.
care.
Well, we'll put little numbers on our.
Yeah. Okay, so next items 3B to 3K omnibus items. I want to take these in omnibus fashion, the following 10 items in omnibus fashion. The details and other materials are in the select board packet. Items 3B through 3K are as follows. Authorization to hire a storekeeper by DPW, change orders for the Tappan Gin, Brookline High School entrance and Driscoll School, acceptance of a rebate check from National Grid, acceptance of donations from the Brookline Multi-Service Senior Center to fund a fitness coordinator at the senior center, and a donation from Joe and Heather O'Neill and Emily Gow and Mark Adams for the recreational therapy program of the Recreation Department, a contract for the Murphy Playground, and 2 Urban Area Securities Initiative awards for community preparedness projects at the Emergency Operations Center in 2023 and 2024. Do board members have any questions or want additional information on any of these items? No? Okay, I move approval of items 3B through 3K. All in favor? John?
Aye.
Miriam?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Thank you for those donations.
Yes, thank you. We many times get donations, large and small, for various programs, and it's important to mention the names of people. I mean, because we really appreciate them, and they do a lot of good for the town. Okay, we go down here. Next, question of no.
Town meeting member vacancy?
Yeah, let me.
No, sorry.
Okay, my notes are a little messed up. We have a town meeting member vacancy. Who's going to speak on that?
I'll just talk briefly. So a town meeting member in precinct 7, Lyle Pinsky, whose term is not up, has resigned. So in order to place this office on the ballot on the May 2nd election, you must vote to inform the town clerk of the vacancy so that he can do that. And for the record, if you live in precinct 7 and you are interested in running for this position, once this transmission is made, nomination papers are available in the town clerk's office, which is here on the first floor of Town Hall, 333 Washington Street. The deadline to submit nomination papers is March 14th, which is rapidly approaching. So if you live in precinct 7 and are interested in running town meeting, this position, you have about 15 days to do so.
Okay, 15 days to both get petitions signed and file them with the clerk. So, any questions or comments? So I move approval of placing the position of town meeting member from precinct 7 for a term of 1 year to fill a vacancy on the ballot for the May 2nd, 2023 annual town election. All those in favor? John?
Aye.
Miriam?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay, next, form-based zoning Opticos contract. And let me just say something here before we start. Find my notes. So I think it's important that we are, voting on a contract that we have amended in order to address some of the concerns that the community has expressed, as well as some of the concerns that are obvious problems with respect to primarily the guidelines, which are not regulations or anything, but just guidelines promulgated by the Department of Housing and Community Development. So with that, starting off with that, I think that members of the board have some ideas or thoughts with respect to how we're going to, go forward with our approval, our vote for approval of the contract. John?
Can I have just like what was changed so that everyone knows?
Sure.
Because I think it is important. So the big change here was in Article 11 of the contract, which the select board has to come back. So Article 11 was called Town Furnished Information. The new version of this is amended to read that the town shall provide the consultant with all available project-related technical data, this is new, and community guidance within its possession, including but not limited to zoning code diagnosis, microscale analysis, the select board resolution providing direction to the planning department on February 7th, and the results from community forums and other outreach conducted by the town regarding the project. The consultant will utilize and rely upon the accuracy of town furnished information. So all of that reinforces what the concerns raised by the select board and members of the community about this, which is to say that the development of this material must be made with the benefit of the community input and guidance about what it is that the ultimate form-based zoning code will take. I do think it's just important to reinforce, right, that the planning department runs the process of this and the outreach and the engagement. The consultant, Opticos, is the group that actually puts together the guts of the form-based zoning. So they are the team that develops the hard science of this, the broader planning of it, the outcomes, the desired achievement. That is the responsibility of the planning department, which the select board has also indicated is something that they are providing direct oversight on in the form of regular check-ins to this point. I will also just say that the planning department has made plans, no pun intended, one for a community kickoff meeting in advance of the meeting with the select board on the 21st of March to provide additional community information and discussions about that process. And they plan to have regular office hours about this project going forward throughout the duration of the project. So this is a very exciting time in terms of direct community engagement with the planning department. I want to make sure, because of Mr. Rosenthal's question, that we talk about the concern about the businesses that would be threatened by the change in zoning. And I think that is not something that is scientifically possible to put together because we don't know. But I would say, generally speaking, that it would be no more or less than the businesses that are threatened by the status quo. I would note that I went to a meeting about the possibility of forming a Coolidge Corner Business Improvement District in the basement of the Brookline Booksmith. And I wish you had been there, Mr. Rosenthal, and others who are concerned about the businesses involved in the community, because I heard a lot of apprehension from them about how newer developments like the street in Chestnut Hill, Assembly Row in Somerville, and the Arsenal in Watertown are making Coolidge Corner less attractive. But there was a lot of determination in that room too, because Coolidge Corner is not those developments. It's not some glass box 5/1 cheap materials new growth place. It's an architectural landmark, which, just like JFK Crossing, like Brookline Village. And the people in that business meeting want the neighborhood to succeed on its own terms, not to become a cookie cutter new development. And that's what form-based zoning is all about, maintaining the spirit of the neighborhood with neighborhood input. It is not a nefarious exercise in social engineering. I want to say one last thing about Mr. Rosenthal's point, because he's raised it a number of times now. The reference to we had to destroy the village in order to save it, to imply that members of the planning department who have been working with this community for years are the equivalent of the people who napalm children, not acceptable. So please, in the future, if you want to disagree civilly with a proposal from staff, don't compare them to folks who napalm children. Thank you. And I'll give you a quote. You love quotes. Here's a quote from another villain of history, Oliver Cromwell. Think it possible that ye may be mistaken. I always do. And I welcome your input. Please, sir, I've asked you in the past, reach out to me directly. I would love to speak with you directly and hear your concerns about this process. So I welcome an email. I welcome an opportunity to meet with you. Please reach out. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry, pardon?
Do you want to take public comment?
I want to have the select board give their thoughts and then take public comment, if you don't mind. Yeah. I guess to follow up on that, this is a very, very complex proposal, especially for those of us who are not, into the development arena. And, it's under a very rushed timeframe. And, what I think the select board is trying to do and what we must do is to take some control over the process of setting the town's policy with respect to the MBTA Communities Act, as well as the guidance that has come out. And, the amendments to the contract is one example of how the select board is trying to take control over this project or this. And I think that Mr. Van Scoyac has another proposal for the contract that would also attempt to further make sure that the concerns that we have as well as the community has are addressed. Do you want to talk
Sure.
about that?
Yeah, thank you very much. And just a couple of quick comments. What I have done is to add some editing to part of the contract that was in the part of the contract that was, where are we getting the feedback?
I think we're good.
Okay. I've edited the contract that was in the packet for tonight. Those who are, let's say, following at home, if they want to access the contract that is linked to the agenda for tonight's meeting, just called, Brookline Contract to Consultant. On page 10, they will find something called Attachment A. And within Attachment A, if Devin will put up on the screen the language of the amended part of the contract, within that Attachment A, under the heading Harvard Street Form-Based Code Objectives, there is added some language which is, I don't want to overstate it. It really is simply an attempt to take what we already have done in the select board statement on this process, to take that and put the thrust of that into some language that is under the heading Harvard Street Form-Based Code Objectives. So quickly, just going over the very minor changes, but significant changes, I hope. There's a cross out of the word help, which then gives us simply the starting sentence: provide form-based zoning districts that enable the addition of new housing units by right. And here's the added language: while also protecting and preserving existing businesses, preserving existing moderately priced housing, and maximizing the number of affordable housing units. And then it continues with the original language. And then there is a bullet point added. This is a completely new bullet point that is added, and it is, I'll read it aloud: to be responsive to input and concerns from the public, town meeting members, business owners, and others, including consideration for flexibility in the application of the MBTA CA guidelines. So those are the two changes, in addition to the changes that were already incorporated into the contract language that was put into our agenda for our vote tonight. And I did distribute that to the other members of the select board. And I'm hoping they'll agree with me that it is useful to have this language added to that Attachment A on page 10.
Yeah. Any thoughts? I mean, I'll add one thing. I think it is useful. It does duplicate the resolution, but then you're putting it directly in the scope of the contract to really bring attention to the fact that we really think these are important things.
That's it.
Whether that's going to create a problem, I don't know. Maybe the town administrator can talk about that. But I think that, we're trying to make it very, very clear that we want to take control over this process and make sure that, things are not left out. So
Just
Yeah.
briefly on that. Yeah, I mean, we haven't had the chance to bring this up with the contractor. I think that's the only issue we've had. So we'd have to take it back to them and see whether or not they agree. again, the kind of role that we're trying to differentiate here, the contractor's been very clear with us. Their role is the quant stuff, the data, the analysis, all the stuff that, it's not the community outreach and the support and all that. That's the planning department's job with your oversight. So we want to make sure we don't know what they're going to say to this. But we can obviously express the intent of it, which I think is clear, which is to just, as you said, reiterate the message of this, and that's fine. The concern would be if they came back with further alterations or said this, but not that, we'd be in a negotiation and we'd be here again next week. But if you were to pass this, obviously, we would strongly suggest that to the contractor that they accept it, sign the document, and so that it would be good to go.
Right.
So we're, staff is ready to go either way. Those are just the potential risks there.
Mike?
I think with that last sentence, I think you've just answered my question. Because the resolution that we voted on, was it last week, 2 weeks ago?
7.
2 weeks ago. That was put together, and we asked the staff to take a look at it and make sure that it wasn't going to cause a problem with their interpretation, their understanding of what the state is requiring. I'm assuming that staff has had a look at this and is comfortable with it.
We're comfortable with it.
Okay.
Okay, good.
It's just a matter of, right, if the contractor comes back to us, we'll be here again.
No,
That's the limits.
I understand. I hope they don't do that, but if
Yeah.
they do, I think it's a valuable addition.
Yeah. Pardon me? Go ahead.
So I want to say that, I think it feels to me like folks are already kind of digging into their positions on this. And what I hope that the public sees is that we have listened, that we have crafted edits to this contract to reflect what we've heard. And what I ask in return from the public is then to let the consultant do their job and let them guide us through this process and maybe have their minds changed, and be open to hearing what this person has to say. My dad always used to say, you hire an expert and then you listen to them. And the biggest mistake people make is they hire the expert and then they do what they want to do anyway. So I implore us to kind of sit back and actually learn and listen. I know that's hopefully where I want to be on this. I have a lot to learn about this. So,
Yeah, we all do.
yes. So I guess I'm
Yeah.
putting that out there as
Yeah.
part of this.
And let me just add that, I've asked the town administrator, we all have asked the town administrator to reach out to other communities, to our state representative, and to approach the DHCD as well as the new governor, right? It's a new governor, and she's different than the old governor, and hopefully more sympathetic to the concerns we have with respect to how this, the guidelines of DHCD really take a one-size-fits-all approach to a very complicated problem, at least in my opinion. I mean, that's what they do. And, hopefully we'll be able to get DHCD to, make the necessary changes or give us, appropriate guidance so that we can actually come up with a form-based zoning article that is going to pass town meeting. That's really the key. And if it doesn't pass town meeting, then, I'll just add, we'll have to pay the limited penalties in the act. I think that the idea that we're going to lose BHA money is just not something that we should worry about. They'll back down if challenged, but that would be a big problem, and we're trying to avoid that problem by making sure that everyone sees that we are being very proactive, really trying to make sure that the state listens to our concerns and makes appropriate adjustments.
I want to add to that, for folks who are watching it or you want to hear more about what that process, that outreach looks like, I strongly encourage you to come on March 21st. We'll have a draft letter for your approval to the state, but I will also say that while we can't go into the details, that the back channel discussions at all levels have already begun and they're already bearing fruit. Other communities recognize that this is also not a one-size-fits-all solution. There's obviously, regulators say, well, gosh, I don't want to issue 50 million waivers to 50 million communities. But if we want to do this right, we got to really put in the effort and do it right. So we're making that push very strongly at every with every open ear that we have, that we need to be, we're engaged with the spirit of this, right? We have the leader, we make this pitch, right? We say, we could be a leader in sustainable inclusionary zoning the same way we're a leader in climate change, right? You know, we can tell the state that we can be partners with them in making this better and actually function to achieve the aims of the community. So that's the tack we're taking. And we're excited to see how it goes as the process moves forward.
Okay, any other discussion from the select board? Devin, do we have anyone in the public ether who would like to speak on this?
The first person signed up for public comment is Linda Pelkey. You've been promoted to a panelist.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm very encouraged by the discussion this evening. So maybe I have to kind of edit my comments on the fly a little bit. But my name is Linda Olson Pelkey, and I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 17 and a member of the advisory committee and chair of the planning process study committee. Since you haven't voted for the amendments, which I strongly encourage you do, I am still going to say that I'm speaking in opposition to the contract with Opticos Design as currently written. Harvard Street is our main commercial and cultural corridor, and imposing the MBTA Act guidelines onto this commercial corridor is a bad fit, as had been detailed by many concerned town meeting members, local business leaders, and residents. By tripling the allowable square footage on much of the corridor that could be built, this upzoning could unleash widespread demolition and redevelopment. The Harvard Street upzoning will imperil our local businesses, displace residents of existing moderately priced housing, and invite demolition of significant structures along the entire corridor. Adding substantial new market rate housing without also planning for the expanded facilities, infrastructure, service, and public improvements we would need to accommodate the growing population is a recipe for ballooning deficits and declining quality of life. Why should we risk so much just to help developers build more multi-million-dollar condos and luxury rentals? To be clear, the MBTA Act is not about affordable housing. The guidelines limit our ability to require higher levels of affordability. They fight against mixed-use development, and they prohibit us from requiring housing suitable for small households, all things that are desirable in Brookline. We should not be trying to meet the requirements of the Act on Harvard Street, but rather we should be looking for districts more suitable for large unit multifamily developments. I think it's bad precedent for the town to engage in top-down, take it or leave it, opaque proposals.
You have 30 seconds.
Despite pledges to engage the public, there are no mechanisms yet in the contract to alter the scope based on community feedback. That says it all. These actions are textbook bad planning practice, and as such, they will foster distrust and opposition that will prohibit positive results at town meeting. Thank you for your time.
That's it.
That's it? Okay, Mike, did you want to?
Yeah, Linda, stay there if you will for a second. Form-based zoning was brought to our attention through your efforts.
That's right.
And you organized a wonderful presentation to the advisory committee that I think is probably still available on the website.
It is.
And of course, we talked about it from the perspective of what did Somerville do? How long did it take them? What did it cost? And so forth. One of the things that we've since learned is that Somerville didn't do its form-based zoning work all at once. It actually, it looked at the major traffic corridors, the major streets first and changed those. And then it worked its way out into each neighborhood, one neighborhood at a time, which is why the whole process took many, many years. And so I'm concerned when you characterize this effort to do something along Harvard Street as a mistake. I'm concerned that you're missing something that it seems to me you would have been in favor of when we first heard about this a couple of years ago. And I would appreciate it if you would
try to explain.
Well, I'm happy to let you, just let me finish the comment. I think that it would be very helpful for all of us to step back and see what a consultant comes forward with. One of the things that form-based zoning is supposed to do is help us preserve streetscape, the way the street feels, the way things look. Let's see whether the presentation that they're going to make, that they'll have to make in order to convince us and convince town meeting to go forward with this. Let's see if it looks like it does that. And just, I would appreciate it if everyone who's been upset, concerned about, massive change and so forth, would just cool off. Let's wait and see what we get back and recognize that whatever change takes place, it takes place over decades. It takes a very long time for things to get built out. So that's my request, is that let's step back and let these folks do their job.
Would you like me to respond?
You're up to the chair if he's willing to let you
Let's try to limit it to no more than 2 minutes.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I guess what I'm, one of the things about all this is that changing the zoning on an entire major corridor is a huge, huge decision, and having that decision taken out of a holistic look at the town and where there is capacity and where we might want to grow, and instead having that decision made for the community, I think that's a violation of the planning process. But the other thing about the corridor and why I would hope you would want to add in things about flexibility and the guidelines and whatnot, is because the way it's currently conceived, it does involve the entire corridor in order to get as close to that capacity number as we possibly can, right? We've heard from Maria that it's something like 5,400 units capacity, but that requires every single parcel being built up to the 4-story level. And for the shorter buildings, the 1-story and the places where the FAR is 1 or whatever, that's a huge change. And that is what could incentivize a lot of demolition that we would have no control over once we pass the zoning. So what I would like to see is the consultant and the planning department being more flexible in terms of not having that maximum height at all places, and maybe even having taller somewhere else, but just allowing the responsiveness to what's actually there rather than applying the same standards, which is all geared towards meeting these guidelines across the board. So that's a lot of why there is this great concern, because of what is the goal? Is it really to make it the best that Brookline can make it and what we all think will work well and not threaten these things? Or is it going to be this one, focused drive to meet those numbers and, damn the torpedoes kind of thing? So that's the sort of dynamic.
You've reached 2 minutes.
Thank you, Devin.
Okay.
I think that's what we're talking about.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So
I appreciate the comments. Thank you.
Okay, so let's move on to the contract. I move approval of the contract as amended, and minutes should show as amended by both the amendment of Article 12, Article 11, as well as the amendment to the what is it? Yeah, to the project scope and budget. Those two amendments, I move approval of with those two amendments, I move approval of the contract. Any discussion? No. All in favor? John?
Aye.
Miriam?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Okay, that's the beginning of a long, long process, and we better keep on top of it, bird dog it to the end.
Right.
At least till town meeting, so that.
Yeah, well, it has to get through, town meeting. And I do appreciate the comments that Linda made about looking for some flexibility in what we do, that not all of the street necessarily needs to be needs to be at the same level and so forth, and it isn't now. And what I'm hoping is that we'll get guidelines that or zoning ordinance, a draft zoning ordinance that will give us the flexibility that we're looking for, and at the same time, let us meet what the state's looking for.
Great. Okay, we just voted, so moving on to item 7, opioid settlement update.
Thank you very much, Joe Callanan, Town Council. So when I was last before you about opioid settlements, that was discussing whether to get your authority to settle the claims against the big three in Johnson & Johnson. That settlement back in April would bring about $1.7 million to the town from just the claims against those defendants. We would get that payment over many years. What I'm asking is for the next 5 defendants to be able to have the authority to settle these lawsuits. They include 2 manufacturers, Teva and Allergen, and 3 dispensers, CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart. If we settle those claims, that will probably bring about $1.3 million to the town over the next 6 to 15 years. And that still leaves some claims against other opioid defendants, such as Purdue, that haven't been resolved. But the discussions about those settlements are probably another $8 billion on a nationwide basis, bringing the total to about $54 billion against the opioid defendants. And it'll probably bring another $500,000 to the town. So we could see about $3.6 million from the lawsuits the town has brought against the opioid defendants. So first, I'd ask your authority to settle these claims as recommended by the multi-district litigation process. It's kind of like a class action lawsuit. But a class action lawsuit is one lawsuit against many, one lawsuit including many plaintiffs. Multi-district litigation is similar to that, but there's multiple plaintiffs, multiple cases, but they're all about the same thing. So Brookline filed their lawsuit against the opioid defendants. So did 2,200 other municipalities. And they're all converged in a district in Ohio, overseen by one judge. And that's part of the multi-district litigation. There's a panel of national lawyers that negotiate with the opioid defendants, and those kind of class counsel, multi-district litigation panel counsel, have recommended settlement. So that's why I turned to you to ask for Brookline to settle.
Great, thank you. Chaz, could you talk about what we would use that money for? And the reason why I asked is that you may recall the tobacco settlements put a lot of money into the coffers of cities, towns, and states, and much of it was used for uses that had nothing to do with the injury or the damage caused by tobacco.
Yes.
We're not like that. So I just want you to assure the audience that we have a plan for using this money for an appropriate purpose, not just to fill our budget deficit, which is a good purpose, but not an appropriate one.
Oh, absolutely. And to that, I would actually ask Sigal Reese, our Director of Public Health, is here. And I know she's available to talk specifically about the efforts that she's been undertaking in terms of opioid mitigation and the work that she's doing on this subject.
Hi, good evening. Sigal Reese, Director of Public Health and Human Services. Thanks for having me here tonight. Yes, as described. So all of our plans would be in accordance with the Massachusetts abatement terms, which are spelled out in, I think, the memo that you got here today. But more specifically, we'll be really engaging with our community coalition on substance use and violence prevention, BCASA, to develop a plan with overarching themes around substance use prevention work and harm reduction, and really using the strategic prevention framework and evidence-based and promising practices outlined by the Federal Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. So the details of the plan really need to include public engagement. And I was actually in a meeting today with the state, with local health departments, talking about ways that we can engage with affected communities, those suffering from substance use disorder, particularly opioid use, and their families. So we'll be doing that engagement through our coalition, but overall looking at prevention services, treatment services, and harm reduction.
Great, thank you. Any discussion from the select board? Miriam?
I'll just give my usual, yeah. If you want to learn more about this, if you like documentaries or nonfiction, I suggest Empire of Pain, which is a phenomenally good book about the rise of the opioid epidemic and the Sackler family. And if you are more of a visual person, then there's a docudrama called Dope Sick on Hulu, which is fantastic, even though it's a docudrama. That's it. Yeah.
Any other? Yes, John.
Excuse me, just a question for our town council. Are there communities that are not voting to participate in these settlements? And if so, what do they see as the downside?
So there are two groups that, let's say three groups. So there's settling municipalities. There are some municipalities that are what are called bellwether in the multi-district litigation process, where you say, Cuyahoga County of Ohio will go to trial on a claim, and the results of that will have impact, will be used as a test and a model that apply to all the other communities. For example, one of the defendants here, Teva, did not settle. They had a trial in New York, Long Island, for 4 weeks, and then got slammed for multi-billions of dollars. I'm sorry, they ended up settling for multi-billion dollars. So they settled for just one county for hundreds of millions of dollars the jury came back with. So you have communities that are bellwethers, you have the settling communities, and then you have the very, 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 very few communities who are opting out. If they opt out, then they have to go to trial and prove their case, like that 4-week Teva trial in Long Island.
Okay,
Good.
Thanks.
Anything else? Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'd like to move approval of authorizing the town to settle all opioid-related litigation as recommended by the multi-district litigation, and authorize the town administrator to sign any appropriate settlement agreements. All those in favor? John?
Aye.
Miriam?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you
That's
very
it. Okay. Go get that money.
Mhm.
Checks will be arriving from this one this summer. The checks from the J&J and Big Three started coming in last summer.
Good. Thank you.
Great.
Good. Okay, next, Community Preservation Committee update. Nancy Heller and Tina McCarthy will be doing the update.
Okay, let me just turn on my video and unmute myself. Thank you. Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Nancy Heller and chair of the Community Preservation Committee, as you know, and here with Tina McCarthy, who is our staff, our very able staff member. I believe there also may be members of the committee in the audience. I haven't had a chance to look at that, but I believe at least David Lescoyer is here. And I would like to introduce the members of the committee and tell you who they are. You know that I am an at-large member, as David is, and he is the vice chair. And we are joined in that at-large state by Minnie Kaluri, who is in a community, very involved in the community, especially in the Fisher Hill area. And then we have some ex officio members who are all, because of their positions, as mandated by statute. So Blair Hines from the Planning Board and Sam Burrington from the Conservation Commission, Jenny Raitt from the Housing Advisory Board, Joanne Sullivan from the Brookline Housing Authority, and Clara Batchelor from the Park and Recreation Commission, and John Spears from the Historic Preservation Commission. So we are a 9-member board. We got to work in last, I would say, in the summer. First, let me just tell you about the Community Preservation Act. Could you go to the next slide? All right, the Community Preservation Act, we get our funding from a local surcharge, 1% on the property tax, and a state match. And the state mandates that we have minimum budget allocations. So those minimums are 10% each for each of the 3 categories that the Act outlines. That's community housing, open space and recreation, and historic preservation. We're also allowed to budget for up to 5% for administrative uses and The other 65% we have discretion over, and we will be able to spread that out among the groups of the 3 reserve account groups. Next slide, please. Together this very abbreviated work schedule for and what we've been up to for the committee. I know that many of you think we've kind of disappeared off the radar, and actually we've been working pretty hard to bring about our mandate and our mission. Our first act was to have some training for the Community Preservation Committee members. That was done by the executive director of the Community Preservation Coalition, which is a coalition of all of the cities and towns who are involved with CPA. And they're a wonderful resource with a very good website and materials that we can use. So our first tasks were to get ourselves organized and then to develop an RFQ, a request for quotation for the procurement of consultant for the assistance in developing a CPA plan. The CPA plan is what is mandated by the state, and we're supposed to also have a hearing about that, and then use the information, including what we gather from our community engagement efforts and our examination of written plans, as well as talking to the various boards. So we will, the first thing to do though is to hire a consultant to help us with this. We have the RFQs issued in November. With the help of Dave Giannakakis, we've reviewed consultant and applicant materials, interviewed, checked references, voted to approve contract with a consultant whose name is J.M. Goldson. Jen Goldson actually began or worked in Brookline about 20 to 25 years ago in our planning department, so she knows our community. She's extremely experienced. She was the head of the executive director of Newton's Community Preservation Act Committee. That was one of the first Community Preservation Act communities in the state. And she went, now she's a consultant to over 40 cities and towns. She's provided material, and she's provided very good materials. Tina has commented on how good they are to the Community Preservation Coalition website. So we're very, very happy that we engaged her, and we're beginning our work with her now. Next, let me just go on here for the few other things that we are doing. We're now starting to work with Jen to develop this draft plan, as I told you, that it will have a robust community engagement. We'll integrate existing town plans. We'll review the needs for the boards and committees in the targeted areas. Then we expect that around June, we will complete our draft and hold a public hearing on that draft plan as required by state law. Based on that hearing and based on some of the feedback we get from the community, we will review and revise the draft plan and then finally approve it, and our scheduled date for that is September 1st. After that, we will be accepting applications for CPA funds. We will begin to review those applications, make sure that the regulations are met. There are some regulations which just define what you can and can't do within each category. Then we will make award recommendations. These are recommendations. Submit a warrant article for the May 2024 town meeting. And we hope our recommendations will be accepted, and we will be funding based on those recommendations. So town meeting actually is the body that's going to be saying yes or nay to our recommendations for funding in these different 3 categories. Tina, you want to go to the next slide, or Devin?
Yep.
Okay, the fiscal 23 budget. Tina's going to take over here and talk to you about the money, which I'm sure you are all interested in.
Yeah, so just quickly, this is an overview slide of our fiscal 23 budget. As Nancy explained earlier, we have to follow the 10% reserve account formula that the state has laid out. So this is how it breaks down in Brookline. We have our 3 categories and our general fund, as well as our administrative fund. Now, all of these category, so the general fund and these 3 categories, we're not spending this money this year. We don't have projects yet. As Nancy explained, we're developing our plan and looking forward to future projects. So all of this money is going to be saved, and we will be allocating it later. And the only money that we're spending right now is the $138,000 that we have in our 5% administrative account. And this is the breakdown of the administrative account budget that we're using this year. You can see we have a part-time staff salary. We have dues to the Community Preservation Coalition, the state organization that advocates for us. We have our contract with the consultant to develop the CPA plan, and then we have some leftover available budget in case anything else comes up. So the CPA plan is based, kind of draws together 3 different things. We have a community needs assessment. That is a community engagement process that will be handled by our consultant with the participation of the Community Preservation Committee. So we're looking forward to starting that. Actually, tomorrow is the kickoff meeting with the consultant. So that's very exciting. And we're going to combine that with the allowable uses under CPA and Brookline's existing planning resources and history. So this is just an overview outline of what is in our scope of work for community engagement. This is our contract with the consultant. I'm not going to go through all of this, but just to note that we have a lot to do and we'll be very busy and we're excited to get started. This is the CPA allowable uses chart. I just wanted to throw it up for everyone to just take a look at, because of course, everyone's thinking about projects and how can I fund what I want to do. So we have these rules. And again, we don't have time to go into that here, but I do want to note the bullet points I have at the bottom, that CPA projects are focused on improvements or acquisitions of real property, that CPA funds may not be spent on ordinary maintenance or annual operating expenses. We deal with capital improvements, and CPA funds may not replace existing funding in the town's budget. This is the schedule of our meetings to be held this year. The meetings highlighted in red are public meetings, including the public hearing in July that Nancy spoke about. So we'll be moving through that process and finalizing our draft plan in August. The final draft is due, as Nancy said, on September 1st. And we've just moved through the process of approving a fiscal year 24 budget. So you can see the outline of that here. We have, again, the administrative expenses, budgeted reserves, and 3 categories. And just by way of explanation, the 10% amount from the allocation for fiscal 23 was not quite correct. And it's a good thing because we actually received unanticipated income just shy of $1 million in the form of a state match. These funds are always a wild card. It's very political. We didn't know how much we'd get, so we were conservative with our budget. And we'll be integrating those funds in our fiscal 24 budget to meet in retrospect, meet the 2023 obligation for 10% of that budget in the categories. And again, we don't have projects this year. We will have projects next year. So we'll be saving all of this money in our categories for spending later. Questions? That's all that we have for you tonight.
Any questions from the board? Miriam?
Thank you for that. And Nancy may have said it and I might have missed it, but the 10% that goes to historic and 10% to housing, those are set numbers. We can't change those.
No, we can change them. Right now, we've adopted the standard allocation. It cannot be below 10%. It can be above 10%, but we just don't have a preservation plan yet. And once we do, we may adjust.
So I guess this is where I'll just put a pitch that we have a lot of housing needs that I would like to see a higher percentage go to housing versus historic preservation, but that's just my one voice on the select board.
Well, we're excited to hear your input through our community engagement process.
I'd just like to say how impressed I am with the detail that you've laid this out.
Yeah.
That you've really thought this through very thoroughly and very carefully, and really appreciate that the care that you're taking with these funds and making sure that that you know what you need to do with them. So thanks.
Yeah, I'd like to add that one of the things I noticed about the housing category is that we can't rehab or restore housing. And that, it is a restriction that prevents us from doing some things that would be very creative. But, this will loosen up money in other areas that we could use for those purposes. But so, any other comments or questions? Okay, we don't need a vote on this, so thank you for the update and the information that you provided us.
Nancy, you're muted. I think Nancy's trying to speak.
Okay, sorry.
I'm sorry.
I was trying to prevent you from hearing my dog. I would just make one comment, which is that I think that the committee has expressed, just in general, some preference for trying to even fund the categories evenly over the board as a matter of fairness to the community and to all the people who worked on in every one of those areas to get the CPA passed. So, I think that's what we're leaning toward, and we'll see what the community engagement process comes up with, and as it informs our opinion.
Good. Yeah, Mike.
I just want to.
I'm sorry, Mike
Oh.
first, and then David.
Well, actually, I wanted to recognize David. David Escoya is here with us.
Oh, is he in the room? I thought he was on Zoom.
Oh, well, he's in the room and on Zoom as a consequence of being in the room. And David was one of the leaders in getting this passed through town meeting. And I want to say, David, your work is paying off very nicely. Thank you.
Go to the chief. Yeah.
Just to say that we were, at least for now, the committee is quite clear we want to hold to the 10-10-10, but that leaves 65%, which is discretionary. And I suspect that based upon the input from the community, when we come to the plan, we will be leveraging that money accordingly. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
It's really a privilege and a pleasure to work on this committee.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, well, thank you for all the work you've done to get us to
Get
this
it there,
point.
yeah.
Yeah. And the housing thing really, thinking about that, if we have to acquire housing with this money.
Well, there's more flexibility in the housing category. That bottom row is support, and there's only one yes, and that's under housing. There are a lot of interesting programmatic things that it's possible to do with CPA in the housing area beyond what's possible in the other areas. So we'll be looking into that, and you'll be hearing more about it.
Okay, I just wanted to say that we need a lot of very creative thinking to figure out how to use what's really a limited amount of money, given the cost of housing in this area.
We'll be up to about $10 million or close to $10 million by next May.
I'll buy 3 or 4 units.
That's why I look forward to working with everybody.
Okay, thank you.
All we
I
need
would also-
is $3 million condominium units, right?
Right.
I would also point out that in Brookline, one of the missions of the program is to acquire property for these areas and for these three, especially in open space or recreation and in housing. And unfortunately, our prices here are so high that, $10 million looks great, but we'll see what happens and how we can best use it to do as much good as possible. I also want to say that the committee members are very thoughtful and dedicated and hardworking, and it has been a pleasure to work with them. And I think David would agree with that. And I very much value his partnership as the vice chair.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have a hearing for a license revocation, termination.
Oh, Bernard, I have to declare my.
Okay, I'm sorry. Bye. Make your
Oh, yeah, you have to
declaration
make
and
my
then-
declaration.
yeah.
I'm just letting the public know that I filed a conflict of interest. I don't have a financial conflict of interest, but I'm friends with Greg and I'm friends with many of the staff at Hamilton and I go there pretty much every week. So I'm gonna take myself to the back room. Good luck. Devin's gonna text me when we're. Yes.
Oh, yeah, okay. You're gonna text her.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so so this is a liquor license and common vittler license violation hearing. And fortunately, over the last few hours, we were able to reach sort of a resolution. But I think I have to read the beginning of the script here, just so we get on the record what this is all about. And then I'll have Mr. Buchheit to explain the resolution that we've achieved and make sure the board is okay with it. So,
If I may,
Yeah.
just for a moment, Mr. Chair, John Buchheit, Associate Town Council in the town of Brookline. I just wanted to report that in the last 40 minutes or so, there's been a slight, the licensee wanted to ask, I'm going to propose the settlement that we talked about. They wanted to make a request. So I'm advising that we go through the script and then when we get to that point, I can, I just wanted to make you aware of that.
okay. A moving target.
Yes.
So go through the entire script, not just the introduction.
I believe, yes, I do believe that we should go ahead and vote the violations, just to get that on the record.
Okay.
And then move to the potential penalty.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, I don't believe there's going to be any contest on the violations.
Okay. Yeah, those violations are in the initial introductory language, but let's go.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. This is a public hearing pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 64, to determine whether the Select Board, as the licensing authority for the town of Brookline, should modify, suspend, revoke, cancel, decline to renew, or set conditions precedent to the renewal of the all alcohol liquor license and the common vittler license issued to Brookline Dining Group LLC doing business as Hamilton, based on the following charges. 1, that it operated without an approved manager or alternate manager in charge from 2019 through 2023 in violation of Section A.18 of the Town of Brookline's Sale of Alcoholic Beverages Regulations. 2, that it gave false information on renewal applications 2019 through 2023 in violation of Section A.4 of the regulations by listing a manager who is no longer employed by Hamilton. And 3, that it failed to notify the board of a change in beneficial interest when the manager, who owned a 5% interest in the LLC, left, which is a violation of General Laws, Chapter 183, Section 15A. The notice of this violation and hearing dated February 10, 2023 was delivered by mail to the licensee's resident agent and managers and by email to the licensee's corporate email address. The notice is Exhibit 1 to this hearing and is incorporated by reference into the record. This hearing is being recorded by the Select Board's recording secretary. So let's start off, Mr. Buchheit, would you like to sort of introduce the case?
Yes, I'm here to present the case to the board and I believe Stephanie Boudreau is here to represent the licensee.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, so just first I'd like to.
Wait, actually, I think I need to just confirm that the licensee is satisfied with the notice that they received.
Thank you, yes.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you, Select Board. Yes, we do. Stephanie Boudreau on behalf of the licensee, we do acknowledge receipt of the notice.
Okay. Okay. So we talked about a couple of the exhibits. Are there any other exhibits that can be entered into the record?
Correct. Yeah, exhibit 1 will be the notice. And in addition, there are exhibits 2 through 9 that I provided in your packets. I'm happy to describe those if you'd like or not.
I don't think that's necessary unless other board members. Okay, we will now hear the evidence from the parties in 2 phases. The first being whether or not there was a violation, and the second being the appropriate action by the select board. Mr. Buchheit, are you prepared to present the case in support of the charge?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chair. So as you said, there are 3 violations. You've read them. The first is operating without an approved manager or alternate manager for the 5-year period. Section A18 of the regulations states that at no time shall the premises be open without a duly appointed and board approved manager or alternate manager in charge. The manager shall have total responsibility for the proper operation of the licensed premises and shall maintain order and decorum within the premises, whether present or not, and shall cooperate in all ways with town officials in ensuring safe and orderly facilities. No appointment of a manager or alternate manager shall be effective unless and until approved by the board. So I would just point to Exhibit 2, which is an email that we received this month from David Ferrando, who indicated in that email that he left the employment in August 2018 of Hamilton. Anyways, as exhibits 3 through 7 illustrate that nevertheless in the renewal applications, Mr. Ferrando was listed as the manager. So that's the evidence, I think, supporting the violation. The second violation is giving false information on the renewal applications between 2019 and 2023 in violation of Section A4 of the board's sale of alcoholic beverages regulations. I think, again, the same evidence that I just presented, the 5 exhibits where that show that Mr. Fernando was listed, yet he didn't work, are evidence of providing of that violation. The final one is a violation of General Law, Chapter 138, Section 15A, which is failure to notify the local licensing authority of a change in beneficial interest in the LLC. If you'll, Exhibit 8 is an ABCC application summary review, which listed in 2018 the beneficial interest in the LLC. 5% of that interest was held by the then manager, Mr. Ferrando. Again, he left in 2018, and we have no evidence here in the town that this board was notified of that change. So those are the 3 violations and the evidence supporting it.
All right, thank you. To the licensee, do you contest any of the alleged violations?
They're not.
Okay, please go to the microphone.
Thank you, Attorney Buchheit. We are not this evening disputing the violations because we have reached an agreement with the town for pre-approved, I guess, penalty, if you will. So we have opted to settle with the town rather than dispute the charges.
Okay. Okay, so I assume there are no witnesses from either side, so we can just move on. Any questions from the board? I'd like to just not ask a question, but just state that the importance of having an alternate manager and the town knowing about the alternate manager is that is a person who sort of maintains, as Mr. Buchheit said, order and decorum in the establishment. Hamilton's is not a rowdy place, but it's still important. And I think the manager is also tip certified, so is able to, detect violations of the liquor laws and maintain sort of the peace of the establishment by not allowing people to imbibe excessively. But also, and what I think is most important is that the manager is the person who is responsible for making sure that our regulations, including our health regulations, for a restaurant, which is critically important, and the building regulations that you're subject to are complied with and work with the town when there is a problem. So, not having a manager on scene is not just a small, problem. So that's the context within which I think we're approaching this resolution.
I mean, my client certainly recognizes the significance of having a manager on record and certainly didn't take it for granted. I would point out, though, that despite the fact that there was no manager, since opening, Hamilton's has not had an operational violation, fine, citation. There hasn't been a sting. There haven't been any operational issues. So while we don't discredit the importance of the manager, it is important to note that even without a manager, there haven't been the issues that there haven't been any issues. So yeah, I'm not sure if you want me to speak on the sanctions or if you want to hear from Mr. Bouquet now.
Mr. Bouquet.
Sure, yeah, I just to clarify, I mean, I believe that the ABC did find some COVID violations, if I'm not mistaken. At some point, am I? No? Okay, perhaps I don't have that information, so I'm going to retract that.
Okay.
Anyways, nevertheless, I mean, in terms of no operational issues, I mean, there have been some issues with the outdoor seating licensing, a number of complaints.
Some.
Yeah.
Significant.
Yeah, significant amount. So
I can attest to that.
yeah. Anyways, I won't belabor that point. So I'm just kind of picking.
So do we need to vote on the evidence since they're
Yeah,
basically
so-
admitting or?
Yeah, I believe at this point, I think it's appropriate for the board to vote whether the
Okay.
violations occurred or not as a first step. And then I think we're going to move to the penalty, what penalty is appropriate.
Okay, great. So we will now vote based on the evidence whether the licensee is responsible for the violations with which it is charged. And then we will turn to the question of what, if any, action the board should take for those violations. So I make a motion for a finding that the licensee is responsible for the violations described in the hearing notice dated February 10, 2023. All those in favor of a finding of responsibility with regard to the charge of failing to have an approved manager or alternate manager in violation of section 8.18 of the Town of Brookline's sale of alcoholic beverages regulations, please say aye. John,
Aye.
Miriam, oh, I'm sorry. Mike,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. All those in favor of a finding of responsibility with regard to the charge of giving false information on 2019 through 2023 renewal applications in violation of section A4 of the Town of Brookline's sale of alcoholic beverages regulations, please say aye. John,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
chair votes aye. All those in favor of a finding of responsibility with regard to the charge of failing to notify the board of a change in beneficial interest when the former manager who owned a 5% interest in the LLC left in violation of General Laws, Chapter 183, Section 15A, please say aye. John,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
chair votes aye. We'll next determine the appropriate action by the board. Mr. Brookheit, please, present present to us where we are with respect to.
Will do. I think with the significant help of Chair Green, the parties arrived at a settlement agreement in this matter, subject to the vote of this board, of course. And I think we arrived at a settlement, but preliminarily, what I would advise, what I'm recommending is that, well, let me describe the settlement, which is that the Brookline Dining Group has agreed to a 6-day suspension, whereby 3 days will be served beginning on Friday, March 10th, 2023, and ending on Sunday, March 12th, 2023. And 3 additional days, beginning on a Friday and ending on a Sunday, will be held in abeyance until the following condition is satisfied or violated. A condition will be added to the all alcohol liquor license requiring the Brookline Dining Group to return to the board in 6 months. Should there be no compliance issues to report to the board in that period, the board will waive the remaining 3 suspension days. If there are compliance issues, the suspension shall go into effect on the first Friday following the determination of non-compliance by the board. In addition, the Brookline Dining Group will immediately provide the name of a manager and alternative manager for the board to consider at its March 21st, 2023 meeting. So that's the recommended settlement. And I believe Hamilton would like to actually present something as well now, so.
Thank you, Attorney Buchheit. So we would just like to, Attorney Buchheit and I had spoken and we had tentatively agreed to, we on behalf of Hamilton's had requested a date in September because of pre-planned, 3 days in September because of pre-planned events and fundraising events and evenings that the licensee has agreed to deliver food for charitable events that are pre-scheduled. So we asked originally for a date on September 1st to September 3rd, which is a Friday through a Sunday, which we believe would satisfy the board. The licensee has done everything in its power to cooperate since these issues have arisen. We realize there have been some issues in the past with cooperation, and the licensee is here this evening and has, since this letter came out, done everything and more in his power to make sure that the town is satisfied. I think that the board has reviewed, or I hope that the board has reviewed the affidavit that we submitted with the many, many letters of support from the community. And I guess the point is that shutting down Hamilton's for any amount of time is going to be bad for Hamilton's and bad for the community. So what we're here to ask is that instead of the March 10th through the dates that Attorney Buchheit had suggested, March 10th to March 12th, we would again ask that the board consider the dates of March 1st through September 1st through September 1st through September 3rd, which again is a Friday through a Sunday, to let the licensee take its punishment during those days where it has nothing scheduled. It will not risk losing quite as much money. If it's forced to shut down in the next 6 weeks where there are sporting events and other events planned, it risks losing over $25,000. And at that point, a financial penalty would probably be preferable to a shutting down penalty. Like I said, they have cooperated. These violations are technical in nature, and we would ask that the board reconsider the request that the revocation occur within the next 6 weeks and allow them to shut down September 1st to September 3rd. And I did have one question as it relates to the settlement that I'd just like to put on the record. Attorney Buchheit referenced the 6-month revisit where we would talk about any non-compliance issues. And I guess my question is, because this is a licensing hearing, are those issues limited to licensing violations, or are we going to open them up to issues with other departments in the town? And I thank you for your time and consideration and hope you will take into account the many good things that Hamilton's brings to the town and the work that they have done since this violation notice was issued.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Buchheit, could you answer the question and then Mike? Simon has.
Yes, I believe I can. Under section A.35 of the alcohol regulations, I believe the sanctions do permit under a liquor license this board to consider all of the various licenses that have been given, I think including the outdoor seating license. So I think it is within your purview to look at non-compliance issues in those areas.
Mike?
So just a comment and a question. The comment is that September 1st through 3rd is over Labor Day weekend, which I assume is a period of time when things are pretty dead. Okay. All right, thank you. I appreciate that. The other question I have is, how did this come to light?
Sure. So I believe Mr. Ferrando contacted the town because he was in the process of becoming involved in another restaurant.
Yeah.
And through that process, he became aware that he may have still been listed as a manager. I'm not sure if the ABC notified him or what. But he called here to ask, and then we confirmed that, and that was how we came to understand this.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
John?
Yep. Thanks very much. Well, I'm just going to speak for myself, and we'll see how the other board members feel. I'm in sympathy with the request for, excuse me, a change to the dates when the punishment will be served. And I guess I feel compelled at this point to remind people of a few things. This has not been an easy 3 years for people in the restaurant economy. And I'll take everybody back to when the COVID first hit, and overnight, everything was shut down, and it was deemed to be unsafe to go out in public, much less go out to a restaurant, and have a meal in public. And that coincided, frankly, just to sort of put all of this together, it coincided with the first year of my service on the select board. It coincided with right around the time that I was elected to the select board. And one of the first groups of people that I heard from was restaurant owners, including Greg, who's here tonight. And every single one of them was telling the same tale. They didn't know if they were going to survive in business. And it took a lot of initiative and a lot of gumption and a lot of determination to see this through for restaurants like Hamilton to survive. And they did. They survived to this day. I hope they survive well into the future. It was equally true of, Jerry at Washington Square Tavern, Dave at the Public House. They were all in desperate need of some kind of sympathetic treatment by the town so they could figure out a way through outdoor public dining that they could actually survive economically. And not just them, but the people who work for them could continue to make a living and to get paid. So it hasn't been an easy time. That doesn't make, that doesn't excuse there being a lapse in compliance with our rules. But I also think it corrects any impression people might have that because of a failure which has been acknowledged to do this by the book and do all of the reporting that is necessary. Because of that, this restaurant is going to be disciplined. But as far as I'm concerned, this is not a bad guy. This is a good guy. I just want to say that to Greg, because it's not just me saying it. It's you'll see it in these letters that we received about the good things that this restaurant has done. And I feel fortunate that we have them in this community. And I think a little bit of leniency here is part of just making sure we maintain a good relationship with people who have, except for this particular indiscretion, have served the community very well. So I hope that helps people to sort of put this in perspective when it comes to what the penalty should be.
My concern is that by starting the 3-week termination in September, we're basically not giving them a penalty. Now, if that's what you want, that's fine.
You mean 3-day?
3-day,
Yeah.
3-day, yeah. Because in September, we would have gone through a performance review or whatever. And if they passed that review, we would suspend or waive the second 3-day shutdown. Now, if they go through 6 months and there are no problems, why would we shut them down at that point? I guess I'm a little concerned about starting this penalty 6 months down the road after they've already supposedly, hopefully, proven to us that they have gotten their act together with respect to, our regulations and procedures.
I mean, would you like me to just quickly respond? I mean, it's a fair question. My answer to that would be the penalty is in the nature of a financial penalty. It happens to be, based on 3 days loss of business. If it's 3 days where they lose business, less business than some 3 other days, I still think it's penalty enough to send the message that we want to send tonight. And, that's why I don't have any problem with the postponement until September for serving the 3 days.
John, did you have?
Yeah, I agree with John. I think it's,
Okay. Well, we have 3 board members here and 2 out of 3
2 out of 3.
agrees with John.
How is this gonna go?
I don't know. Let's see.
So,
Oh.
no, and I think on the same basis, it's $1 penalty. It doesn't matter whether
Well, why don't we charge a monetary penalty? Because I don't think
They
that
offered
they're
to
closing
take that
down.
instead.
Pardon me?
They offered to take that instead, but I think that's because they were facing the much stiffer one. If this is a little bit less, it'll still.
Well,
send
I
a
think,
message.
yeah, I think having to close the operation for 3 days is actually stiffer than, it carries other connotations besides, besides dollars, besides a monetary penalty. So,
And those other connotations include the message to everyone that these are important
yeah,
regulations and they should be taken seriously. So.
Yeah.
But Ms. Boudreau, you wanted to make a comment?
Well, I would say that, we agreed with Attorney Buchheit to the 3 days plus the 3 days in abeyance as a continued courtesy to the town to show our willingness to work with the select board and with the other departments. I appreciate your comments about COVID. I had a whole presentation that I tabled because that we had reached an agreement. It's all in our memo and the affidavit. But it has been a real struggle. And as you pointed out aptly, Mr. Manos was able to keep Hamilton's alive and is still, I think all the restaurants are still financially struggling. So to be able to minimize that struggle while still sending the lesson that the board wants to send and making sure that, the consequences have been served, we appreciate that. And as far as if the board wants me to discuss with Mr. Manis a financial penalty in lieu of a 3-day shutdown, I would be happy to do that. It would take me just a moment.
Burkhardt, did you want to comment?
If I may.
I mean, for example, what are the, how do you do that? Or how would we?
Yeah, so that's where I think there's a little bit of.
I mean, assuming the other select board members would even go along with that.
I'm
Go
going to
ahead.
start it by quite frankly admitting that I'm a little new to all this. Licensing and the regulations and rules around it. However, I have in my research, I think assessing the proper financial penalty it's a little more nuanced and harder to do, in my opinion. So I think this would be something that might take a little more time to arrive at, that we have time to do in this meeting. So I would encourage you to perhaps stick with the suspension of days. I think that's a little easier and more cut and dry. It's a well-worn path. But how helpful that is, I hope a little bit.
Are there other, September, it seems, that it just sort of bothers me that.
The thing is, I thought like events, not the veterans fundraiser, every weekend I have something going up. And go through the schedule and stuff. September was the first month that we nothing scheduled for at all. That's why we decided to start in September. I got stuff in August and this, that. And make a comment on manager on record, alternate manager. And it's.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, you need to go to the mic.
And just on the alternate manager, it's like, as we know with the restaurant industry, it's tough at the moment, even getting staff. So that's one of our biggest problems. And I'm there 7 days a week. So I've been the manager there every day. And every time you do get a manager, by the time the process goes through, you end up, it's like the turnover of staff is crazy. So that's one of the reasons why the alternate manager has never been put in place with the town. So just wanted to make that comment with staffing with the rest of the industry.
So, Ms. Boudreau, what would you suggest in terms of giving the town sort of leverage to ensure that mistakes like this don't happen in the future, and as well as all the other issues that have come up around Hamilton over the past period?
Well, because they are technical violations,
I wouldn't characterize it as a technical violation.
well, the licensing violations are technical in
Well,
that,
I'm sorry, excuse me, but not having a manager on staff means that, it could mean that there's no one to make sure that health standards are maintained. That's a very serious violation for a restaurant.
well, okay. My understanding of the manager, the licensed manager of record through the ABCC, it's just somebody to be there to protect and make sure there are no issues with the alcohol, not having anything to do with the health, not
Okay,
having
but
anything.
we're talking about a common vic license too.
Right, but that's not the manager of record. That's not the ABC Mass General Law, Chapter 138 manager of record. Those are issues that are most normally dealt with by the business owners, the LLC owners, which Mr. Manis is one of. So the manager of record from the ABCC's perspective is somebody who purely oversees the alcohol. And the alternate manager from the town of Brookline's perspective is somebody who is supposed to be there to oversee the alcohol when the manager of record is not there. I'm certainly not disagreeing with you that there should have been, or there should always be somebody there addressing the health issues, addressing the building issues, but that's not the same person as the licensed manager of record or the alternate manager. It's operationally, it's not, and legally it's not. And when I say that there haven't been operational violations, what I'm referring to are alcohol-related operational violations. We recognize that there have been issues with the Board of Health and there have been issues with the outdoor dining, but those have nothing to do with the, they're not violations of Mass General Law, Chapter 138.
So important. It might be, I'm sorry.
I appreciate that, but they are nonetheless, honestly, in some ways, they're more serious than this particular violation because they affect people who live around the restaurant. So if I were you, I would let those lie, and let's just deal with with what's in front of us.
Very well. So again, we would agree to the 3-day license suspension and the 3-day in abeyance, and would ask that the dates of September 1st through September 3rd be those dates. Recognizing that we'll be here before then, and hopefully you won't have to tack on 3 more days to that at that time.
Mr. Buchheit, do you give your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to echo, I think what you already said, Chair Green, which is the point that, they are responsible for looking at people who are drinking and whether they need to, they get the appropriate tip training. And so I do think they are serious. The other point I would like to make is just as a general observation, I mean, enforcement is hard. Nobody really likes to do it. Staff doesn't love to do it. So we do appreciate your support, when we undertake consent. So thank you.
But what about the date? Is there an issue as far as you're concerned?
I mean, that is in your discretion. I don't have a.
You don't have a preference?
I mean, I understand the point that's being made, that it does seem, to allow 7 months before the penalty arrives. I know I have children and, but not to kind of analogy, I suppose I want to make. But another, it's sort of typically, yeah, it's a little more effective if it happens sooner, but I think it's within your discretion to pick a date.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other?
Should we vote
Yeah, I guess we might as well vote. I don't have to be a weatherman to know which way the wind's blowing, so.
Is there special language required?
Yeah. Burkhardt, what language do you think we should use for this, this vote?
I think you should use the language that I think it's identical to what you came up with, except
Except for the date.
Except for the dates?
except for the dates, if that's the way that the board is.
Okay.
Yeah.
In terms of this, what we've been calling a performance review, or how does that work? I mean, in other words, how do we set up a mechanism for ensuring that there's compliance at the end of the 6 months, so there has been compliance at the end of the 6 months?
So I think what we contemplated was that there'd be a date certain when the licensee came back. And at that point, we would, have a report. I would collect information from the various departments that are involved in regulating, and then we would report that to you. Of course, in the event that something, there is some significant issue, then I think that would be brought to you sooner. And I think the way that the vote is structured at that point, it would allow you to impose, I guess, the 3 days that were held in abeyance immediately, if need be. But it would require coming back to you and a determination by this board that there was another violation, and that therefore the 3 days held in advance would need to be served.
Okay, does this language allow us to immediately implement the 3-day penalty if, for example, on June 1st, there is a violation?
Double check and look at it to make sure. Yes, it does. What it does is immediately following the determination of non-compliance by this board, the following Friday, those 3 days would go into effect.
Okay, so in June. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to propose I'm going to move that the board suspend the all alcohol liquor license and the common victular license first for 3 days beginning
September 1st.
on a Friday. Okay, September 1st. Let's see, and second, suspending said licenses for an additional 3 days beginning on a Friday and ending on a Sunday in 2023, which latter 3-day period will be held in abeyance until the following condition is satisfied or violated. A condition will be added to the license requiring Hamilton to return to the board in 6 months. Should there be no non-compliance issues to report to the board in that period, the board will waive the remaining 3 suspended days. If there are compliance issues by the the suspension should go into effect on the first Friday following the determination of non-compliance. In addition, Hamilton will immediately provide the name of a manager and alternate manager for the board to consider at its March 21st, 2023 meeting. All in favor? Or any questions or, okay, all in favor, John?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
And what should the chair do? The die has already been set. I'll just abstain. Okay, thank you.
All right.
So we have another item related to you, so don't go. Is there anything else, Burkhardt, that? Yeah, okay. Let's see, the next item is I mean, it's the manager.
Right.
Yeah, let me find the magic language. Okay, question of approving the application of alternate manager Manus Johnson for Brookline Dining Group LLC doing business as Hamilton at 1366 Beacon Street. Any questions or discussion about that? This is related to the previous matter in that we asked them to immediately appoint a manager, and they've done it. Okay.
Right.
Okay. I move approval. John?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
We
I'm
got
back.
Marion back.
Oh. Okay,
I'm back on.
You
Zoom.
can vote on this. Okay.
Yes, yeah, this is just,
Miriam.
aye.
Okay. And chair votes aye. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
And by the way, don't take anything I said personally. I love your chicken wings and your fish and chips are the best I've found around here.
Take care.
Thank you. Okay. Next, select board sponsored warrant articles. Is that the next item?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Melissa. Miriam, are you in the building or are you home?
I took the opportunity to go home.
Okay,
Seemed like a good,
that's good, good move.
glad you didn't see me sneak in and grab my stuff.
Oh,
Good evening, members of the board. We're looking for some general discussion here on whether or not there are any select board sponsored articles. The warrant will be closing next week, so we usually have a placeholder here to make sure if there is any committee work that's being done and it may result in a warrant article being filed, that everybody is aware of what might be filed on behalf of the board. So speak now if there's anything that you know of that might be coming through. Otherwise, we'll be filing our standard warrant articles that we normally do for the annual town meeting, the budget, collective bargaining, etc.
yes.
Charlie, do you want to talk briefly about the solar panels? I think it's important in advance of the ZAB meeting tomorrow, just so the board knows what's going on there. Sorry to put you on the
Sure,
spot.
yeah, I'm here and I can talk about that. Sorry, I'm not in a good position to turn on my video right now. So essentially, the question that has arisen is whether or not the town would still like to authorize a solar PPA agreement, specifically a license for one on the Heath School. So there was a warrant article passed associated with that, but it had an expiration date in, I believe, December 2021. So in order for that to go forward, the town would actually need to pass a new warrant article. But there have been some recent developments, if people are paying attention, in solar, especially as it relates to local government. Whereas we were not able to take advantage of a tax credit available to private entities. The Inflation Reduction Act recently made available quite a bit of money for municipal governments. And it comes in the form of a direct credit for 30% of the project. Some folks on ZAB have really expressed interest in going that route. And it's been, sort of circulating internally, whether or not we need to think about going forward with a PPA or talk about direct ownership. But with the warrant article deadline approaching soon, it sort of now falls to the question of, do we need a placeholder so that we can actually have some good conversation? Or do we actually just want to go straight to direct ownership and not go with the PPA route? So the real issue here is we have a ZAB meeting tomorrow morning where I believe that will be discussed. The question of whether we want to do a placeholder article at all. It's, it remains to be seen sort of what the general consensus will be. I will say that there are some good positives and negatives to going both routes. The main, I think, proponent of doing a solar PPA at this point is that it's actually a shovel-ready project. We have a PPA agreement with the company Solect through the Power Options Cooperative ready to go. This is how we did the last 4 solar projects we've done on different school buildings, I believe. And this was just the last of them that needed to be authorized and put forward, and did not do so because of issues related to COVID and delays associated with getting the project together. So now it's ready to go. The question before the town is, do we want to have a conversation about doing direct ownership, or do we want to move forward with this solar PPA as it stands? I think that more discussion is warranted, and so a placeholder article has been thrown out there as a discussion point until we can do more analysis.
I have a comment.
Yes.
So I think a placeholder article is appropriate. I would point out that even with a 30% credit, 70% remains to be spent by the town. So whereas with the PPA, it's the company that with which we have an agreement that actually undertakes the pays for the cost of putting it up. And you know, I think it's worth looking at the advantages. I know that some of the folks on ZIAB are very interested in that. I do want to point out, and I hope that you will mention this politely to ZIAB, that if ZIAB wants to have present an article, they're an advisory board to us, and that it would be sensible for them to come to us and request that the select board put the article on the warrant. With the series of articles last town meeting in November, I believe that ZIAB just went forward pretty much on their own. And I think that's not the best practice.
Right.
So,
Thank you,
Mike,
for
I'll just
raising
add,
that.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'll just add that we know that there are going to be some great financial benefits to doing a direct ownership model, but it's an untested area. And there could be pitfalls we aren't, ready to undertake. There are management responsibilities to having your own array. And you have to take them down yourself at the end of the 20 years there, or however long that they live, they last. There's a lot of maintenance costs associated with them too. So there's a lot to discuss, and I think the idea of going to ZIAB is just to make sure, that there's at least some consensus around what might be the best option, right? But appreciate your comments.
Yep.
Good, thank you. Okay, and anything else? I understand that the town clerk may be doing internally some corrections to the bylaws to get rid of references to entities that no longer exist. Like I ran into an example with the Community Relations and Youth Resources Commission. Is there anything you can report on that, or is that something that's really his problem, not ours?
I mean, it's everyone's problem. I mean, I think Joe Callahan, our town council, is hopping up to kind of talk through what's been going on that front.
So there's two things going on. One is an existing, oh, by the way, Joe Callahan, town council, an existing program that Ben has been working with a vendor to update our bylaws and be able to put them online. So that's going forward. They've just come to us essentially with a first draft of their work. So they're doing kind of those editorial changes, seeing the inconsistencies, but really not changing anything, just flagging them. Okay. So we'll have kind of an idea of there's a bylaw requiring that we are required to put in all contracts that reference a committee that no longer exists. So something like that. So they'll just flag them. Okay. So that's one effort that's going on right now. Ben is also considering proposing a warrant article for town meeting that would then give him the authority to make those editorial changes. So non-substantive changes. For example, recently we had two warrant articles passed close in time. So they use the same article number. So we had two articles, 8.39 the first one and 8.39 the second one. So like give Ben the authority just to say, that second 8.39, that's 8.3, 8.40. So that's the idea of the warrant article, and that's being drafted now. So there's two things going on.
Yeah, good. Mike.
I have one question, as long as we're talking about town meeting. And this is something that, Chaz, you may not be able to answer at this point, but when we looked at software for voting, for hybrid meetings, hybrid town meetings, there was one package, I believe one option was for us to have software that would give us the same facility as we have or we had during town meetings previously, live town meetings previously, in-person town meetings previously, which showed the vote as it progressed on the screen. And I was asked the question whether we're going to go back to that. Because I know that we're looking at, we have new devices, new handheld devices. We had to get new ones. And I think it's important that if we possibly can, continue that, that whether we have remote voting or in-person voting. And I appreciate I'm springing this on you at the, so if you could just check it out with IT, I would appreciate it.
So I actually do know the answer to this. So unfortunately, because of the shifts and the process involved in this, we are still doing the votes through Zoom. So we are going to be maintaining the vote process that we kept in the remote only meeting for this meeting. So people will come in, they'll have the tablets, but the vote will be conducted through the Zoom system. So people won't see the tally of who voted for what until the subsequent day at this town meeting.
And is that a function of not being able to get software that would give us, because I have to go back into my notes, but I was chair of the committee that worked on remote town meeting to begin with. And it was one of the things that I know we thought was possible.
Yeah, I think
Mike, Mike, if I could try to jump in here, I think part of the reason why tablets were chosen as instead of the remote controls that town meeting members are used to having is that if there's software that is available that can be pushed out to the tablets, it's easier to implement than, just changing the
Sure.
device.
Yeah.
So I think that at this point, given the immediacy of town meeting, the tech team has chosen the Zoom platform, but I think they're open to exploring what might be available and utilized via the tablets that we just invested $66,000 in.
Okay, I would just say, let's do that as opposed to simply being open to it.
I would also note, just for as that it's not sprung on anyone, that as of today, an emergency budget supplement for FY 2023 was proposed in the House Ways and Means Committee, which contains a provision that extends the remote meeting option from the end of March 2023 to the end of March 2025.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah, so we don't know if that will pass, but it's on the fast track because it's part of an emergency budget amendment to this current fiscal year. It could potentially pass as early as Thursday. So we will have some clarity on whether or not in the future remote or hybrid meetings will be an option for at least these next 2 years. But we do not have that clarity now. It's got to pass the House and it's got to pass the Senate. It's at Ways and Means today. It's slated to go before the House tomorrow. If it passes the House tomorrow, it goes to the Senate on Thursday. So there's a lot of yeses that need to happen. So I don't want to get people's hopes up or.
Right. Well, I'm not sure it's a matter of getting people's hopes up or down.
Right.
Depending on your point of view.
Right.
Would that apply to town meeting as well as? I
Yes.
mean, it applies to all our meetings.
Yes, however, the notice requirements still apply. So how this would impact the fact that we've already noticed an in-person town meeting? It would throw a wrench in a lot of things to try and move it around now. We will obviously study the law carefully. It's possible, again, we're still, at least at minimum 48 hours away from this making it through the legislature, and then the governor has to sign it. So there's a lot that could change between now and then, but that is out there. And that it's for that kind of length.
Okay.
Okay, good. Anything else? No, let's move on.
Well, do we need to take a vote on this question of the placeholder?
No, we typically don't have votes. It's just a way to kind of make sure that every member of the board is informed.
Okay.
Yeah, and if they decide to do a placeholder, we'll get it at that point. Okay, next, town meeting process discussion. Remember, we talked about this previously and we pushed it off until today. So now it's today. And I don't know if anyone wants to go through the details of why we're at this point, but the issue is how we deal with warrant articles in terms of hearings and recommendations. And what I'd like to throw out as first a simple solution to what I think is a simple problem. I think your friend Marty Rosenthal suggested that this was a simple problem. And that is that we agreed to have a public hearing for all warrant articles, including even the minor and so-called frivolous ones. And we'll have to work out how to control the hearings so they don't go too long. And we may bundle minor articles together into one hearing, but petitioners and others will have an opportunity to give their views to the select board in a public setting for all warrant articles. And then secondly, typically we vote on articles at a different meeting than the hearings. At that separate meeting, our recommendation can be an abbreviated recommendation, or it can be that we recommend no recommendation. Or we can also say that we adopt the recommendation of the advisory committee if we agree, so that there is less overlap in the combined reports. I mean, that's just an idea or a proposal to how we deal with warrant articles as you know, once the warrant is ready for review. We don't have to vote on that, but I mean,
Right.
that's just my way of suggesting a solution.
Miriam's got her hand up.
Miriam?
Miriam, so, okay,
Yeah.
go ahead. Yeah, sorry, then I have something.
You're
Sorry,
muted.
leftover.
Okay.
Oh,
The CTONS is meeting on this very topic tonight and Thursday.
and they have a very elaborate solution.
Well, they do indeed. They, if there's, well, I won't comment further on the elaborateness of it. I have to say that they've done a very thorough job of thinking through all the permutations. And one of the things that they're considering, I believe, is the possibility of having a select board subcommittee have hearing. So you could have two select board members have the hearing and bring a report back for the articles that we don't feel require a substantive
Yeah.
discussion with all four of us. It'll be all, yeah, it'll still be all four.
Yeah, my thoughts on that is, first of all, anything that they're talking about would not be inconsistent with my so-called
Yeah.
simple approach.
Right.
Secondly, maybe this is a question for town council. Is the board actually acting as the board if it's just two members?
Oh, no, it would have to come back. It seems to me it would have to come back to the. board
Okay,
for a
so
report.
we'd
Just like we've done with interviewing
Committees,
possible appointees. You come back with a slate and say, well,
Yeah.
okay, here. vote on
But,
this.
but here we're giving the public an opportunity to speak to the board only in a subcommittee. Because when it comes back to us,
Yeah.
it's going to be just pro forma consideration. Unless we have another hearing.
Which there's no point to that.
All right.
Yeah.
Did you have something to say?
So I'm trying to understand what the question is. So again, Joe Callahan, Town Council, is the question, can the board delegate to a subcommittee hearing in a decision that binds the rest of the board? Is that where you're going?
Not binds the rest of the board, simply the hearing part.
Oh,
Right.
sure. So sure. So if you have a, you can do this by a policy or a vote that, you're going to hold a hearing, but you have the hearing
Mhm.
delegated to a committee.
Mhm.
Sure. That's
Yeah.
essentially what the general court does.
Okay. And so maybe this is not really a legal question, as really kind of a
Practical,
policy
yeah.
question.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that is, do we want to set up a abbreviated, a subcommittee of the board to hear the public's comments on warrant articles? And I think that may not go over very well.
Hmm.
That, the public wants the entire board to hear what they have to say.
Well, it depends on the warrant article. I mean, if we're talking about, batching warrant articles together, this might be
Yeah.
a way to give some of those warrant articles
Yeah.
slightly better hearing. I have no religious wrath about this.
Yeah.
Okay, this is just a thought.
No, I know.
So I think the simple solution that you propose is a very good one. But I just want to mention that I know that this, the subcommittee idea is one of the things that CTONS is
Yeah.
considering.
Well, why don't we just go forward with, hearing every, have a hearing on every warrant article and just structure the hearing so that they're not
Right.
overly
Right.
burdensome.
The one caution I would say is let's see what the warrant looks like.
Yeah.
That was gonna be my recommendation.
Mhm.
Okay. Next item, boards and commission appointments. Do we have candidates? I don't see anything in the,
You have building commission.
the building commission, and
Yeah,
The
we,
naming committee has been
we met that
Okay.
Oh, that's
person
right.
last
We-
week.
We had,
Yeah.
had the interview with her last week.
yeah.
Right. Okay, I don't have her name.
Brooke Duskin.
Oh, Brooke Duskin. I should remember that name. Yes. Any discussion about Brooke Duskin as an appointee to the building commission?
Nope.
No, she was really impressive
Yeah.
candidate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Mhm.
So I move favorable, or favorable action on the appointment of Brooke Duskin to the building commission. All in favor? John?
Aye.
Miriam?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
And chair votes aye.
And I just want to clarify that's for a term expiring in 2025.
Okay, thank you. For a term expiring in 2025. Okay. Okay, that's the end of our agenda.
You get one more thing.
Oh, we
One
do?
more thing.
You got other business.
Oh, that's right. Other
Mhm.
business.
Mhm.
Any other business from select board members?
Should we offer an explanation of this item?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Who's gonna do that? Oh, Miriam, okay.
Oh, I have other business. I don't know.
Oh,
if
you have
John-
other business. Okay,
Yeah.
so other business was sort of a placeholder for things that come up at the last minute that the board wants to put on a futures list, or just alert the board that it's may come up at a future meeting. I mean, we wouldn't be able to deliberate on these items, but yes, this is an opportunity for us to bring them to the attention of the board and the public. So what is your other matters item?
I really, my other matters is paid parental leave. And I would like us as a board to discuss that.
Okay.
Yep.
So may I ask a question about that? And I guess, Jazz, excuse me, this will be directed to you. What has concerned me about this in the past and would concern me again if we were to take this up in the future is,
Joe is saying, don't talk like that. Because we're beginning to deliberate on something that's not on the agenda. And maybe what we.
how do I express concern that we maybe shouldn't bring this up?
Joe, you want to provide some guidance here?
This is about scheduling. So if you want to get into the merits of it, that's a deliberation. This topic hasn't been noticed.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk about paid parental leave being on the agenda next week, 2 weeks, 3 months from now,
Okay.
that's an appropriate
Okay,
discussion.
so let's just talk about when we schedule that discussion.
I mean, in terms of purely schedule.
Correct.
We still have the materials from the last time this was discussed. We can update them and bring them back to the board, and the board can deliberate how they want to address it from there. And I can have a recommendation in terms of, as it relates to town and school and all that stuff. So if you want to talk about it next week before the warrant closes, we can be ready for that. If you want to talk about it at some other time, we can do that too.
When was the last time it came to the board?
Believe it was in early 2022, yes, or I can't remember, if it's 2022, 2021. Anne Braga, are you still with us? She's not still with us, unfortunately. Devin, do you remember when this was? Or
It
Melissa?
was 2022 since I was here.
April
was still
April
on-
19th,
still on the board.
2022.
Wow,
April 19th, 2022.
I'm impressed.
There we go. Yeah,
Shortly before I was elected.
we still have that material. And it hasn't, because it was, in recent memory, obviously inflation and some of the numbers have changed, but we're not talking orders of magnitude difference.
Yep.
We can come back and we can discuss as a practical matter.
Okay, so-
Options for you to consider.
Okay, so let's put it on the agenda for next week.
Well, my proposal, since all we can do is discuss scheduling, would be that we not schedule it until after we have settled the two outstanding contracts that we're waiting to settle.
Hmm.
And excuse me.
Well, this is a discussion, not an action item.
Yeah, and at that point, we can say, let's wait for the contracts to be settled.
Yeah, my concern.
I can also, again, make sure that at that discussion, we can talk about what impact that would have on the contracts. So you can then think as a matter of merit, whether or not that's something that you want to take into consideration or move. So we'll be sure to have information about what that does, or what that does, how that impacts the negotiations. Because
Okay, but yeah,
I think next week sounds great.
Just to decide what we do going forward, not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
As I said, just
all I'm
not to
asking for
adopt
is
anything.
discussion. All I'm asking for is the discussion.
Okay, you got it.
Thank you.
Okay, that's the end of the meeting. Let's end it.
All right.
See you next week.
And it's before 9 PM.
There you go.
By
Well,
12.